It's open season on former US presidents. It seems any Tom, Dick, Harry, Crook or Ryan armed with a long gun can manage to get perilously close to a man who was once the world's most protected and even now remains better protected than most heads of state. Despite that, in less than 9 weeks or slightly over 2 months, a former US president has found himself in the crosshairs twice. Fortunately, Donald Trump, the 45th US president and Republican candidate in the upcoming presidential elections, has survived. Perhaps, like a cat, Trump does have 9 lives. But is that something the American security apparatus responsible for protecting former presidents wants to find out? The first attempt should have led to an overhaul. Yes, the US Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheetle, tendered her resignation amid scrutiny over security lapses after the first assassination attempt against Trump. But clearly, the lessons that needed to be learned were not taken seriously. Hello and welcome, I'm Abhishek Singh and you're watching The Mint. In this video, I will tell you about the latest assassination attempt on 45th American President Donald Trump, why some are claiming what transpired as a vindication of the Secret Service's efforts and abilities, and more importantly, why some are saying it is impossible to protect Trump while he plays golf. Now, some are saying the security service agents did what they are trained to in such situations on this occasion. That is, engage and apprehend the man. But can that be claimed as a win by those responsible for Trump's security? To be fair, no one was harmed. So perhaps yes.
Well, I think what was better is that no shots were fired and the threat was neutralized before the would-be perpetrator could actually do anything. So from that point of view, certainly it was more successful. And he was playing golf, apparently on the 5th hole, we're told. And the normal practice of the Secret Service is to send agents at least one hole ahead of where Trump is, and that's what they did. So one of the Secret Service agents, who was, we'll call him the advance person, noticed, which is quite surprising to me, but impressive, noticed a gun barrel sticking out of trees on the edge of the golf course. And then, again, according to the protocol of what they are to do, considered this an imminent threat and opened fire, engaged this rifle. Apparently, the Secret Service did not hit the person, but that caused the person to flee. A bystander, an average person, somehow was either on the edge of the golf course or in it, I think just outside, saw this person flee. With his phone, took a picture of the person and of the person's car and license plate, which that individual then gave to the authorities, who very quickly captured the person on the highway a few kilometers north of the golf course. When the shots were fired, Trump was taken to a secure location. He was not harmed. The person who had the rifle seems not to have been harmed, but is detained. And the FBI and the Secret Service are formally treating this episode as a likely attempted assassination. So the Secret Service seems to have done better in this instance, although the circumstances were different.
But that's just one side of the story. The other side that some are pointing out is this. In other words, Trump is being blamed for taking his security lightly. And it is not something recent. Even while he was in office, he was accused of taking liberties. Liberties which other presidents refrained from. And what are these liberties? Well, at this point, we're concerned with one. This is Mar-a-Lago, a Spanish phrase which stands for sea to lake, and also the name of the golf resort Trump owns. Located in Palm Beach, Florida, for most, the sprawling golf resort with 126 rooms, built on 17 acres, which is also one of the Trump's residences, is just that, a golf resort. But for Trump's security detail, this has been a nightmare. The wide open space and the lax entry checks for guests were often pointed out as not sufficient even while Trump was in office and used to visit for a game of golf. Trump made a total of 285 daytime visits to the golf club, out of which he played a game of golf on at least 142 occasions. In total, Trump is believed to have played 800 rounds of golf. All this while several American publications and security experts continued to point out that Mar-a-Lago had become a spy den. But since back then Trump was still in office, while it was difficult, his security detail was big enough to plug holes. Now his security detail is much smaller, covering the vast area and ensuring all the vantage points, bushes and greens are safe is not easy.
It is a nightmare and just about an impossible assignment. Independent of the individual, Trump poses particular challenges or problems, but for any individual, it's a real dilemma for the Secret Service. But since Trump moves all over the place all the time and does not follow the guidance, I'll call it, of the Secret Service, that increases the challenge. And if you're on a golf course, which is 7 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide, with constantly moving venues, because he's always hitting the golf ball, that makes it an incalculable almost challenge for the Secret Service.
Add to that the threat posed by those provoked by Trump's political polemic.
Let me quote what a Secret Service agent, friend of mine from many years ago, told me. He was assigned to vice presidential and presidential details long ago. But he said, just as a starting point, as a point of initial reasoning, before they get into any specific information, if you take the population of the United States, which is 330 million now, and you assume, and this is not a clinically established data point, but this is back of the envelope initial approach exercise. If you assume 1% of the population is mentally unstable, and that 1%, which is very low actually, and 1% of that 1% has some inclination to commit violence against authority figures out of whatever motivations, that 1% of 1% is in the United States 33,000 people. So before you get to any motivation, politically or other kinds of psychological, social, individual motivations, that's 33,000 people that theoretically the Secret Service would want to keep track of at all times. And that is a literally impossible task to do. So and then you add in political motivations in the current political environment in the United States, violence, largely because of Trump's rhetoric and the Republican Party's rhetoric, has become not quite normalized, but he has incited people, as we know, to assault the U.S. Capitol and has called on opponents to suffer violence. People do what their leaders frame reality as being acceptable to do. That I can give an infinite number of instances of that. So the environment is quite challenging, independent of specific motivations. So what do?
After the latest assassination attempt against Donald Trump, several people are demanding that his security must be upgraded, including Vivek Ramaswamy.
Now, Vivek Ramaswamy is not alone in demanding that Trump's security should be upgraded, at par with that of the sitting US President Joe Biden, considering there is a known and substantiated threat against the 45th US President, who is also a candidate of the Republican Party in the upcoming US presidential elections. Experts seem to agree.
Well, I think it was appropriate. I think it's correct that the Secret Service increased the levels of protection for the candidates after the July attempt. I don't know whether it should be exactly the same number of resources as for the president. My inclination is to say probably not, but that's largely, I think, determined by resource availability. If you have, I don't know how many individuals the Secret Service is assigned to provide protection to, but the number is in the dozens, I think. And the president has a squad of, I don't know the number, but probably 24 people. That is a resource demand that I don't think the Secret Service literally is able to meet. It's a real challenge to provide that level of security dozens of times over 24 hours a day everywhere in the world that these individuals happen to be. So I think they have to make some tough decisions on how they allocate their resources. Certainly increasing the protection level has been done, and I think that was probably wise, given not so much the attack that failed in July, and now this one, as the general atmosphere of rising tensions, this almost open incitement to violence. And as I said, a general population will take to heart, some percentage of it, the statements by leaders and authority figures. I cited in another context what seems to be a silly comparison, but it is not. When I was a little boy, Superman was a popular television program. And of course, Superman can do anything, and he jumps out of windows and flies. And that sounds foolish. But truly, large numbers of people started jumping out of windows, and not just children, thinking that, well, if he can do this on television, so can I. People are that impressionable. And when you have political leaders saying you have to fight like hell, beat him up, he doesn't deserve to live, all these sorts of things, then it is a fearful environment. And I think that is the primary reason why increasing the security details is a necessary step to take.
After the incidents, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris both issued a statement, expressing relief to know that Trump is safe. In a late-night post on his Truth Social account, Donald Trump thanked the security service and other law enforcement for their incredible job of keeping him safe, after stating that it had been an interesting day. The question, however, is what's stopping the US from protecting a former president and presidential candidate? If you liked watching this video, please don't forget to like and share and to subscribe to The Mint.